so let's try it again. I'm sorry about that. Okay.
My name is Kirk John, and I was born in Coatesville and went to Coatesville High School and never went to college. But after I got out of high school, I had the electrical course and became a electric welder down at Lukenweld, and kept getting better. Got to be first class qualified, Navy qualified welder. And I was doing that when the Japanese hit Pearl Harbor. It was on a Sunday, and they called us from the work and come over to listen to the radio and told about the airplanes, what they were doing to the Pearl Harbor, to the boats and all. So from then on, I could have had deferment to stay welding, but I felt a need to get into the service. I always wanted to fly since I was a boy, about 11 or 12 years old. And I wanted to go to West Point and then go into the Air Force. So when I finally decided to go into the service, I went down to Philadelphia and joined up to the Air Force, and they gave me a physical to see if I could qualify, and I did, especially the eyesight one. When they had a guy there with a depth perception, you know, and he got it messed up. He says, bring him even. So I brought him even, and he messed it up. He says, bring him even. I brought him even. He messed him up. He said it the third time. He says, I'll be damned. He says, I haven't seen that good for a long time. So I got right into the Air Force.
Okay. Let's talk about when you were a boy. What inspired you to fly? What experiences with flying did you have?
Well, I was born in 1919, and in the 20s there weren't very many airplanes around. And when the one did fly over our place in Coatesville, I would rush out the door, almost knock it down to get to see it. And I'd watch it till it got out of sight. But we only maybe had one a week, maybe two at the most. But I really wanted to get into flying.
Did you have any, planes were rare. Did you have any experiences, any run-ins with a plane? Like, did you ever get to fly on one as a boy?
Yeah, when I was 14, they had a Ford Trimotor come into the Coatesville Airport and was taking people up for a penny a pound. And I heard about it, and I wanted my dad or mother to take me up and go up with me. Neither one of them wanted to go up in the plane, but they took me up and left me fly. So I flew, and what they did, they took off Coatesville Airport to the west, circled around out over Lukens and back up and landed. And it was a penny a pound, and I got it for 48 cents. I think it was 48 pounds. Loved it. And more than I wanted to fly. And I'd go up to the airport every time I had a chance just to see the airplanes.
That's a lot cheaper than $1,000 to fly in a P51.
1,500. Yeah.
That's even worse.
That's what they charge for a half-hour ride in one.
Oh man.
47 cents.
So let's talk about then what made you want to enlist? Was it Pearl Harbor or?
Yeah, that was the main thing, because I kept that in mind ever since I heard it on the radio.
Okay.
We didn't have television in those days.
Okay. Where were you on December 7th?
I was welding down at Lucan Steel Company at the welding place.
Okay.
And I was working on Navy submarine engines is what I was working on.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the date. Do you remember the day you enlisted?
It was in 1942 and in September, but I don't know the exact date. Toward the end of September 42. is when I went down to Philadelphia and enlisted. And then I had to go to all the different flight schools. Well, first of all, went down to pre-flight at Virginia, at one of the fields in Virginia, forget the name of it. And I was there for a couple of months at pre-flight. And then I went to Florida to get the primary. I flew primary down there to Arcadia, Florida. And then I went to basic up in Georgia, at Bainbridge, Georgia, and flew the, we called the Volt-T vibrator. I don't know what its real name was. That's what we called it. And then I went down to Florida again to not Pensacola. What's the name of the place? Anyway, and there I flew the AT-6 Texan. Did you ever hear one of them? That's a little brother to the Mustang. It's made by the same North American Air Company.
Okay.
And it flew nice. I loved that little AT-6. And it was the first plane I had with a landing gear that came up and a prop pitch that you changed. And it was getting me ready for the P-40 Warhawk that I flew for my overseas combat training. So they gradually brought you up to it.
Okay. Let's start with your training. Let's start. Do you remember basic training? Did you have to go through basic?
No, like I say, pre-flight.
You went straight to flight school?
Yeah, pre-flight. I had already got basic training while I was in high school. I went down to Fort Meade, Maryland for a month of officer training. Then that was in my sophomore year. No, my freshman year. Sophomore year, I went down to not Fort Meade, but Fort Monroe, Virginia. And there I had shooting at boats out on the water there. And I was there for my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And when I graduated from there, then if I would have been 21 and I took a course, I could have gotten a commission as a second lieutenant. But I was only just getting out of high school, 18 then. So that's where I had all my basic training. And then the pre-flight was when I started to find out about flying in the early stages.
So first, what was the program you were in then to go to basic while you were in high school? Was that like an Army program or?
Yeah, it was, what was it? It was like when you're in college, you take college preparation for service. What do you call it?
ROTC.
Yeah, ROTC. This was Citizens Military Training. Citizen Military Training Corps.
Did you enlist in that or enroll in that with the intention of going into the military? Or?
I was hoping it would get me ready.
Okay. So then after high school, you went into welding.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a military.
No.
You were building stuff for the military, but wasn't.
Yeah, right.
What led you to that as opposed to enlisting straight out of high school?
Well, in high school, I took electrical course, and I wanted to go down to Lukens and get in the electrical end of the mill, but they needed welders, so they put me in welding. And I started off basic and worked my way up to first class Navy qualified. Okay. And that's when I left there and went into the Air Force.
So then, back to then flight school. How old were you when you started your first classes of flight school?
Let's see. About 23.
So then you went through flight school. You flew the Stearman, then the AT-6, then a P-40. When did you get to finally fly the P-51?
Not till I got to England. Never got close to a P-51. I saw one fly over a couple times down in Florida, but I never got close to one until in England. When I got to the base where I was assigned to fly out of and I walked up to it, and man, I fell in love with it right away. It was a beautiful plane to look at, and it was a beautiful plane to fly. It really was.
What did you know you were going to fly P-51s?
I knew I was going to fly fighters, but I didn't know just exactly where I would be, because they still had Lockheed Lightnings, P-38s flying, and P-47 Thunderbolts, and I didn't know what I'd be put in. But I was glad that I got in a Mustang outfit.
So
3 squadrons of Mustangs.
And how many in a squadron?
About 20, maybe a little bit more than 20, but the most they ever put in the air at one time was 20 in a squadron.
So let's talk about then your getting to Europe. What's the process of coming from the United States to Europe? How did you get there? How did you find out?
That's another thing. They sent me to New Jersey, to the water's edge there, and I spent a day there, not allowed to call anybody on the phone, not allowed to send a telegram or nothing. The next morning, they put us on a small boat and went across to the New York side, which is only a small distance, about less than a half a mile, and pulled up alongside the Queen Mary. We got off of that thing, got on the Queen Mary. 2 o'clock in the morning, Queen Mary slid out of its place, went down along. They didn't, no horn blowing, no people playing games or nothing. Nobody knew we were leaving, 2 o'clock in the morning. And we went down past the Statue of Liberty. They made us stay below they wouldn't let us up on to see the Statue of Liberty even. And they didn't want anybody to know who was on board. So we all boarded between midnight and 2 o'clock.
But how many?
It took us, we left at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it took us the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And the next day we got up and looked out, and we were anchored in the Firth of the Clyde River up in Scotland. And there were some other major boats around us. There was a couple destroyers, and there was one aircraft carrier, and the Queen Mary, and some smaller boats. And we got off the Queen Mary and got onto a small boat, and they took us up the Clyde River to Glasgow and left us off there. And I spent one night in Glasgow, and the next day they took us over to the other side of the river and put us on a train, and the train took us down to my air base where I was assigned to go, which was at, can't think of the name of it. It's terrible when you get old, you forget everything.
You remember quite a bit, though.
Yeah, well, that's where I first saw the Mustang.
Before you got on when you found out you're going to Europe, were you excited, nervous?
Really, I didn't know for sure where I was going when I left Florida. From where I was flying the P-40 Warhawk, they just put us on a train and we went. And we didn't know where we were going. Like I say, we ended up in New Jersey, and we still didn't know what, but we kind of figured we were going to Europe then when we were there. Otherwise, it had taken us west to California, probably. But like I say, we spent the night there not able to call anybody or talk to anybody. Same way before we left down there, we couldn't. And nobody knew where we were or where I was going. I never let them know until I got over to England and I was able to write to them. Didn't have any cell phones or anything like that in those days. And I wrote to my mother and I wrote to my girlfriend to let them know where I was.
So, yeah, I guess then you when you got to England, did you know you said you didn't know what base you were going to? They kind of just put you on a train and you show up wherever you showed up.
That's right.
Is that okay? Did you?
I thought I was going to fly fighters because I flew them in combat training.
So when you left combat training, you didn't even know you were going to fly. Like there could have been a chance you could have flown the B-17 or the B-24.
No, I knew I'd probably be flying some fighter because that's what I was taking my combat training in. But I didn't know what, P-38 or P-47 or P-51 or just what.
So you get to your base, and then how does it work getting assigned a plane? Like how do you get your plane that you can name?
Well, when they signed the first plane to me, a fella had just reached R&R, retirement recreation, went back to the stateside, and they gave me his plane. And he had named it Crazy Kid. That was the name of the plane. And that's the one I had for first 10 missions. And that's the one I got shot down in and crash landed. And then they gave me another brand new P-51D. All these were Ds with a bubble canopy. And I flew it for 20 missions, and I was off one day, and another guy was flying it, and he got shot down and killed. They gave me the third P-51, and I had it when the war ended. And the day I was off, as I said I was off, I went down to London, and we were stationed 40 miles north of London. I went into a Red Cross billet down there, and I was shooting pool with a bunch of other pilots, and one of them said, "Look out there!" And I looked out there, and a big old Rolls Royce pulled up out front, and the chauffeur got out and came around and opened the back door on the sidewalk side, and out stepped Queen Mary, Princess Elizabeth, and Princess Margaret. And they come in the billet and came around and shook hands with every one of us pilots and thanked us for what we were doing for England. I got to shake hands with the past Queen and the present Queen, Queen Elizabeth. She was about 18 years old then. She was a pretty lady. And she was about 18. I was about 20, maybe 23 by that time. I don't know, 22, 23. And she was very interesting.
What was she like? I'd never heard those stories that the Queen came around.
Yeah.
What was it? Was it a big deal when she came in, or was it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't think she did it often, but she just happened to do it the day I was there, which was wonderful.
I've never heard that before. That's really cool.
It was a great experience to shake hands with the Queen and the princes and the princes. So that's what I was doing the day that my plane got shot down.
Okay, let's go back to when you found when you got your first plane. You said the previous pilot had gone on R&R.
Yeah. So
you took it over.
Yeah.
When you first saw it, what's your first thought seeing that plane?
Oh, well, same as I had before I was glad to get it. It was great. And I had the same crew chief, assistant crew chief, and armorer the whole way through, with that first plane, with the second plane, and with the third plane. And when the war ended, I still had them, and our particular fighter group, the 55th Fighter Group, was assigned to go to Germany at the Occupational Air Force. So I flew it over there to Germany, to a place called Kaufbeuren in southern Germany, right near the Alps, about 10 miles from the Alps. And I spent July, August, September, October, and November there. That's 5 months. And left in December to come home and got home in time for Christmas. Queen Mary took us 5 days, or less than 5 days to get there, 4 days and a night, 2 nights. And I come home on a Victory ship. It took 14 days, and they come over North Atlantic, and the front end would go up in the air, and then boom, down. Almost everybody got sick on board. I didn't. I never got sick flying. I never got sick on the ship. But I'd go to eat a meal, and there'd only be 2 or 3 guys at the table. Everybody was sick, vomiting all over the place. And when the front end went down in the water, the back end would come up out and go brrrr, back in the water, and then the front end would go, bam, it would go. It was noisy. So it was so rough that they finally took it 20 or 30 miles south in the ocean to finish the trip over.
You had a wild ride coming home then. It was.
Oh, we sure did. Going over was smooth as could be. You know, the Queen Mary was so fast that they didn't have any escort. They went on their own. They knew by twisting and turning that they could keep away from the German submarines, that they couldn't get a bead on them and fire a torpedo and hit them. Excuse me. I guess it's all right for me.
All right. Let's see. You got to England. You got to see the Crazy Kid. That's where we kind of left off, I guess. You got us on that plane, and you flew 10 missions in that plane.
Yeah, the first one. That's when I got shot down in that one, and that one was gone. And then I got 2 more after that. Brand new ones. Nobody had ever flown them except for testing, I guess.
The first 10 missions you flew, are there any that stick out? Any missions that really stick with you?
My 4th one. I was flying a squadron commander's wing because I was a new combat pilot. And we had escorted bombers. That was our main job, escorting the bombers to the bomb run and picking them up after the bomb run and bringing them back to friendly territory. By that time, see, the 9th Air Force had moved over into Belgium, Holland, and France, and were on here, and the Germans had retreated back towards Germany. So we had some land in here that we called friendly territory. And I forget where it was. What was I talking about before I started talking about the friendly territory?
Your 4th mission.
Oh, yeah, 4th mission. We had done all that, and we had gone in and strafed different things and shot up different things, and turned around. We were heading home to England. And we were late in the afternoon, and at the bit, the wingman of the element leader called out, "Bogies, 430 low." And I looked back over my starboard wing and looked down. We were at about 18,000 feet, and looked down, and at about 3,000 or 4,000 feet was a lot of airplanes low, flying back into Germany. And so Eldon Rigetti, our colonel and flight squadron leader, he said, "Prepare to bounce." And he gave me a 3-second peel over. He peeled over and went down. 3 seconds later, I peeled over and went down. Then the element leader, and then his wingman, and the 4 of us went down, and we went in on those planes, and the back ones, we knocked all 4 of them off, right? They didn't even know we were there, and we destroyed all 4 in the back. So that was my first shooting at a plane. And then if we, at the speed we were going, if we hadn't done anything, would have been out in front of the rest of them shortly. So as soon as we got done shooting the back ones, we cut our throttles and we went up and did what we call high wing over, almost like a loop, and came back around again. And by that time, they had gone in different directions, and there was 2 out in front of us. And Rigetti decided to take the one going to the left, and one went over to the right. So we followed that one to the left, and we kept cutting him off and cutting him off and cutting him off. And Rigetti fired a couple times. He saw the tracers going out right in front of the guy's plane, and he saw it. So he decided it was time to get out of there. So he did a sharp turn to the right, and he had a high-speed stall and crashed into the ground. So we didn't even shoot him. We came around and took a picture of him burning on the ground. So we got 5 planes that day, and didn't have a shot fired at us. That was my 4th mission.
So that was your trial by fire, your baptism by fire, so to speak.
Yeah.
Is that your first time seeing an enemy plane?
Yeah, it was.
So I guess the previous 3 missions were just escort missions, but you didn't have any. Did you take any contact, or?
Besides escort, we had strafing and targets of opportunity, but we didn't have any aerial combat. By that time, the Germans had lost so many fighter planes that they weren't sending fighters up to get our bombers. They were sending up anti-aircraft stuff. And so there was no aircraft up here to shoot anymore. We just flew in with the bombers and picked them up and flew them back out again. Then we got shot at when we were doing ground strafing and all that, but we didn't get any airplane shooting at us at all.
What time frame? Like what years?
Well, let's see. I come out in 46, 45. Well, the day I got shot down was January the 7th, 1945.
So late
1944. And they weren't sending any German fighters up then, in 45. And wasn't until, here comes my wife. Hey, this is your apartment, honey. This is your apartment.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Go right ahead, pay no attention to me. Oh, it's nasty out there.
It's a little wet. And so after your 4th mission, came back, and then any other missions in those first 10 stick out?
Just strafing missions, that's all. I got shot down. I got shot up one time in there. Got a radio shot out, and had an experience with that, but I won't go into that. Nothing much else I can tell you about.
So your 10th mission is the one where you went down.
That's right.
Can you tell me about that mission?
Yeah. Squadron commander told me to go down and strafe an airfield in the Ruhr Valley. That was part of Germany. So I went down and I was at about 12 or 1,000 feet or so, and I went down and come in low so they wouldn't know I was coming in to the airfield. And when I first, I was going real fast, I guess about 500 mile an hour, when I come in sight of a plane sitting at the on the runway ready to take off, and it was about 1,000 feet out in front of me. I opened fire, and I knew I was hitting him. I saw the tracer bullets going right into the wing and the fuselage, and I flew right on. And by the time I get in there to that, I got right about where he was, and he blew up, and he flipped me up on my port wing. And here I am down near the ground level. I was down below the rooftops because that's the safest place to fly, between the top of the buildings and the ground. And here I am. I thought my port wing was going to hit the ground. And I called on the Lord to get me straightened out. And we got the plane back over, and I'm flying right toward the hangar, and there's another plane sitting there. And I shot it up and pulled up over the hangar and went out across toward the woods. I hadn't had a shot fired at me that I knew of. And I went out over that woods. You might not believe me when I tell you this, but I'm flying over the woods, and somebody told me, "Look down there," just like that. Just like that. I looked down there, and right in front of my front end of my port wing, I looked and I saw Germans kneeling down around a machine gun nest up in the top of the trees. 2 seconds later, I looked back at the trailing edge and I saw them jumping up and getting on the guns. So I did a quick 180, right straight back, and went back toward the field where I just strafed. And boy, those tracer bullets were flying over me. It looked like the 4th of July. Hundreds of them, tracer bullets going, but they weren't hitting me. And it was just because I got the warning from upstairs. The Lord, God, or an angel, or somebody told me to look down there, just like that. So, forget where I was. Oh, so I flew down along the airfield that I had just strafed, a mile or two, and then I turned back to the west again, and I went over and I hit that same woods, and I gave it the power to go up over the woods, and when I gave it the power to go up over there, oil come back all over my windscreen. Black oil. Cut my view off entirely to the front, and I could see nothing. So I wound the canopy back and looked out the sides, and here I am down treetop level, oil all over my windscreen. I didn't know how far the engine was going to take me or what would be. And I looked down at my temperature gauge on the oil, and it was all right. And I prayed that I'd get up to 5,000 feet, because the way you had to get out of a Mustang, you had to disconnect your oxygen, your radio, and all the stuff, your seat belt and everything, and you had to have 4,000 or 5,000 feet. You rolled over and fell out of them. That's the way you bailed out. You didn't have something to pop you out or anything like that, like they do today. And so I prayed that I'd get up to 5,000 feet, and I did. And when I got up there, I didn't want to bail out, and the engine was still running, so I thought, well, I'll wait till the engine starts to quit, then I'll bail out. So I flew for about 6 or 7 minutes, and the engine started running rough. And I still didn't want to bail out. So I looked around, and I was flying up a old country road that I had been following for a little while, And I looked over some trees, and over here was a nice big field. And I thought, boy, I could crash down in that easy. And it was on January the 7th, 1945, and there was about 7 or 8 inches of snow on the ground. And that was good because the scoop under the Mustang acted like a plow if you landed on a dirt field. But I landed on that snow and I slid out across there like I was in a sled or a snowmobile or something for about, I guess 50 yards or something like that. And as soon as the plane stopped, I jumped out of it and went back away from it and stood there and looked at it for about 15, 20 minutes. Nothing happened, didn't catch on fire, didn't blow up. So what am I going to do? Where am I? Am I in German occupied? Am I in Allied occupation? Air? Yeah. Or is a farmer going to come and tell me about crashing in his field? I didn't know. I didn't see anybody. Didn't know where it was. And I looked around at the bit and saw 3 people standing back there at that tree line that I'd come over before I crash landed. And I started to walk back toward them, and they disappeared. So I turned around, walked back to the plane, took off my Mae West and threw it in the cockpit, took off my parachute, threw it in the cockpit, took off my dinghy, that's the rubber boat that, in case we went down in the water, threw it in the cockpit, walked away from the plane again. Stood around another half hour, I guess, didn't know what to do, which way to go, or didn't see anybody. I didn't know what I was going to do. Didn't know where to start to walk. And after a long period of time, I looked back and saw one person standing where the 3 had been. So I went back toward that one person, and they stayed there. And when I got back to it, it was about an 18-year-old girl. And I went up to her and I said, "Americano." And she says, "Yeah." And I says, "Where's Germans?" She pointed to the east and she said, 20 kilometers. That's all she ever said to me. And I found out later on that 20 kilometers was 8 miles. I didn't know it at the time. I thought it was 20 miles. So I thought I got 20 miles over out of Germany, but I didn't. I only got about 6 or 7 miles over the Battle of the Bulge Lines, is where I crash landed. But if I'd have bailed out the first place, I'd have still been in German occupied. If I'd have bailed out, well, it'd been all right. The second place I'd have landed near that field I crash landed in. And so what am I going to do? So she couldn't talk to me, I couldn't talk to her. And I waited around there a while for her and with her, but we weren't talking. After about a horse and wagon come up that country road that I had been following, and come right by, and she stopped him, and she talked to him, and he motioned for me to come and get in. So I went over and got in the, it was an open wagon with beer barrels that looked like to me in the back. And he took me about 2 miles up that country road to an Audubon and stopped and motioned for me to get off. So I got off, and he went across the Audubon and on up the country road on the other side. And I stood there for about an hour. No traffic at all on that Audubon. Nothing. You'd think there'd be all kind of traffic on it. Nothing went by. Finally, maybe it wasn't an hour, but it seemed like an hour to me, a GI truck came by and picked me up. And here he was from the 9th Air Force Base, 40 miles below Brussels, Belgium. And he told me I was in Belgium, and he took me to a 9th Air Force Base up towards Brussels and left me off there. They kept me there 5 days, and finally they got a small plane to fly me back over to England to my air base. And that's how I got back, and then I flew 37 more missions after that. It was interesting being in Brussels there for a couple of days. I went up into Brussels and went out to a park. I don't know whether I should tell you this or not, but there was a rich man that lost his son. He was lost and didn't know where he was. And he said to people, he said, if I find him, I'm going to put a statue up where he was and the way he was. And when they found him, he was taking a leak. So he made a statue of the boy taking a leak, but he put it up in a park called Manicampus. That's what they call the park, Manicampus Park. And I had to go see that. So I went and saw it, and I saw the statue there peeing into the lake there. That was one of the days I spent in Belgium. It was something.
When when you left your plane in the field, did you have what did you feel about that? How did you feel about that?
I don't know. I just didn't have any feelings about it at all. I couldn't do anything about it, and I didn't know who was going to get it. At that time, I didn't know I was in Belgium even.
So you got back to your base, and what was your homecoming? I guess what happened?
Oh, I had to go to the where they inquire all about it. I just had to tell them all I've told you, and wasn't long till I was back flying combat again. A couple days.
Were you nervous to go back to flying again, or?
Not any more than beforehand. I was always a little nervous going over, but once I get over there and got into combat, all fear left. You didn't have any fear when you were flying combat.
You just kind of focused.
You were just hoping to get the Germans instead of them getting you.
Okay. So when you came back after being shot down, what plane did you get then? You got another P51?
Yeah, I got a brand new P51, and I named it Ornery, and put teacher's pet on it, and then I flew that for 20 missions, and then I got another one after that guy got shot down with it, and I named it the same thing, Ornery and teacher's pet, and I was flying it when the war ended. And I flew it into Germany in the Occupational Air Force and flew it all the time I was there in Germany for 5.5, 6 months. I had about 600 hours in a Mustang.
In those 20 missions before your first, the P51 got shot down, did anything happen in those? Any memorable missions in those next 20?
Just targets of opportunity that we clobbered. For instance, train engines. I destroyed 4 train engines, and I could tell you about each one, but I'll tell you about the third one. The first one we try to shoot where the fireman and the engineer are. We shot that little cabin, and then the engine all the way along. Steam come out and went up twice as high as the engine. And then you knew they were just going to go down the road a little ways and die. Well, the second one, the same thing. The third one, just as I was ready to shoot the place where the engineer and the fireman were, they jumped out and rolled down the bank in front of me. And I didn't get to shoot them at all. But I did shoot their engine. It blew off the steam too. So I had shot up 4 engines, and that was probably mostly during that 20 missions that I flew. Some of them was anyway. And I don't know, I might have got those submarines during that 20 missions too, or it might have been after that, I don't know.
What classifies a target of opportunity? What were the rules with that?
Anything you saw moving, a convoy, a boat on the rivers, somebody marching. We had to be careful about that though, because most of our prisoners of war. Wherever they went, they marched. They didn't get any rides anywhere. So we didn't do too much of that. But we did shoot up a couple convoys. And I shot a passenger engine one day sitting in a station, and I strafed it from the back to the front and then got the engine. So we always could find something to shoot at, always. And every time I fired my guns, they fired. See, we had 1,000 rounds of ammunition in all three guns and all three guns. So you had 6,000 rounds of ammunition to fire. Plus your two inside guns had an extra 250 rounds in case you'd shoot all your bullets and your four guns would stop shooting. Then whenever you pulled the trigger and the six guns fired, it just felt like you put the brakes on. The plane did. But I never experienced it, but with just the two firing, it wouldn't have felt that way, I'm sure. I never fired down to the 250. But like I say, every time I fired the guns, they fired. And every time I took off with the plane, I took it all the way around and back and landed in the home base.
That's all because of your mechanic and your armory guy.
Probably, yeah. Except the one that crash landed.
What when the plane you had flown, when the other pilot took it out and didn't come back with it, what were your thoughts on that? Did you how'd you feel about?
I felt bad because I liked the plane, but I got another one just like it.
What and that second plane, the third plane, what did you name it the same name or?
Yeah, same thing. Ornery teacher's pet.
So.
But the first one wasn't that. The first one was Crazy Kid, and that's it.
And then those names, you got that name from where?
Well, he had it named that. The pilot had it before I got it. And then he went back to the States on R&R, and I got his plane.
And then the Ornery Teacher's Pet, that name came from where?
Because I was going to marry a teacher when I got out.
Okay. So after those, so now we're at 30 missions. Your plane gets shot. Somebody takes your plane out and it gets shot down, so you get a new plane. Those last 17 missions, anything significant in those?
Just targets of opportunity. That's all. Like I say, I strafed those submarines, and I strafed a couple boats on the Rhine River, and what else?
Can you tell me about the ME-262 again?
The what?
The 262?
Yeah.
Can you tell that story again? Just your encounter with it, how it happened?
Well, I was escorting my bombers. They were B-17, and there was about 6 of them in the area I was escorting. And Messerschmitt 262 came up in front of the leading plane and hit him head on, and then went up over him. And I didn't know he was there till the Messerschmitt went up over top of it and up over our heads. And right away, as soon as I saw it, I broke formation and went after him. And I went up, and he rolled over. Well, as I went up, he flew through my windscreen, and I fired at him, and the tracer bullets went his way, but I didn't have the gun sight on him, and he went on around and went down, and I rolled over and went down after him, and I chased him, but he was getting further away from me all the time, and I chased him for quite a while. I thought, well, I can't catch him, but I can follow him, and when he goes to land, I'll get him then. Well, After bed, I looked at the airspeed indicator, and it said I was doing 620 miles an hour. Wow! We were redlined at 550. So I cut the speed back right away, and I lost the P6, the ME6. Yeah, you know what. I feel crazy. I can't come up with things like that. Anyway, he went on out of sight, and about that time I hit the. They have a name for it, but I couldn't come up with that either. It's like a wind block that a propeller-driven plane can't go through. You can hit it, but it shakes you up instead of letting you go through it. Now a jet can go through it because a jet doesn't have a propeller, but the stuff can go through and out the jet. But with with a propeller, well, you got to you can't keep on going. And my plane was shaking and vibrating and felt like the wings were going to come off of it. And I got the power cut, and I finally got it around and was flying to out of that wind block. And I thought maybe I was going to lose the wings on that plane for a while. But they stuck with me, and I flew it and got back to the base okay.
Well-built plane. Well-built plane.
Yeah, it was a well-built plane.
A few more quick questions. So you're an ace, you have the ace designation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the planes that you shot down? Do you remember those missions?
As I told you, by that time I got there, they weren't sending planes up anymore, but they decided they were going to issue the same credit for one you got on the ground. So the other 4 I got on the ground, and I got 2 more that I didn't get credit for because they were on the plane I got shot down in on the 10th mission. I didn't get credit for those 2, but I got credit for all the others, so they made me an ace. So
what happens? What do you get? Like, is it just a title, the ace? When you hit 5 kills, it's just an ace.
Yeah.
It's just a title.
Yeah.
Do you get any kind of certificate, like anything?
Well, I had 2 distinguished flying crosses, and I had 11 air medals, 5 for the 5 planes I got, and 4 for each 50 hours of combat that I had. I had, 334 hours. So 300, that's 6 medals there and 5 medals for the 5 planes. That's 11. That's what I got there. That's this middle medal. And there's 2 things on there, which means that the medal plus 5 and 5 more.
Okay.
That's on there.
Jeez. Okay. So the war ends. Do you remember where you were when you found out the war ended?
I was flying combat that day. The day before that, my squadron commander, Elwin G. Rigetti, the same guy I was talking about, he was shot down strafing. I don't know where. I was in the air at the time. And he crash landed, but it was in June, just before the end of the war. And when he crash landed, his scoop caught and threw him up. He broke his nose on the gun sight. He called up and told us, he said, well, I'm down okay, but I think I broke my nose on the gun sight. But he says, you guys, I'm all right, but you guys go ahead and keep up the good work. See, the war hadn't ended yet, the day before. And some civilians got a hold of him and hung him. We found that out after the war. Terrible, terrible thing.
Do you remember? Did you see his plane after when it hit the ground? Did you kind of circle around and?
No,
He just called up?
we didn't. I didn't see him land, and I didn't see him after he landed. I just know he was straight from the German airfield and come up off that, and that's when they got him. Like they would have gotten me if I hadn't have got the warning to look down there. Those guys would have got me and clobbered me something, because I'd have kept on flying due west, and that's the way they were set up for me to go due west. But I didn't. I put in that 180, and that's what saved me.
Do you think about, then or even today or in the last couple of years about what would have happened had you not gotten that message, had you not turned around?
I'd be dead. I would never got back after my 10th mission. I know I'd have been dead. No doubt about it in my mind. Because they were sitting there waiting for me.
Instead, you made it back in 37 missions later.
Yeah.
47 total.
Yeah.
So, you went into Germany, in occupied Germany. How long were you in Germany for?
Well, as I said, sometime the end of June until December, I was there. And in December, I was up for my captaincy. But by that time, I was operations officer of the squadron. That's second in command of the squadron. And I'd become a flight leader and all that in between that. And I had scheduled 2 of our younger pilots to go up, and one was supposed to fly under cover where he couldn't see, and the other one was supposed to be safety pilot for him. And he was supposed to fly by instruments for a half hour, and then change. The other guy was going to do it for a half hour. Well, being fighter pilots, they got to biting each other in the air, and they had a mid-air. And the planes crashed, and I'm in the air at the time. I don't remember what I was doing, but I got a call from Fuzzpot, my home base, and they said, we got record that there was a plane crash, and they gave me the area to go to, and they'd like me to go over there and check and see if our planes were involved. So I flew over there, and sure enough, as soon as I got there and flew over, I saw the one that was there that I was looking at was one of our planes. So I called back and said, sure enough, that's our planes, all right. And then I flew on back to the base. I don't know what they were going to do with them. But that was that.
So then you came home to the United States, and then how long after that until you got out of the military completely?
Well, I got off active duty on January the 1st or 2nd, 1st I think it was. And I flew in the reserves for 2.5 years. And then I got out of that.
Okay. And then after the war, you came back and you got into insurance?
At first, I went down to Lukenweld and welded for a few days until I had a chance to go with Prudential.
You never wanted to fly?
Not so much anymore, but it would have been nice. I did get a commercial pilot's license while I was flying in the reserves. I could have flown and gotten paid for it, but I didn't.
Just didn't want to?
Mm-mm.
Okay. That's I just have a couple more questions, kind of general questions, and then that's pretty much wraps up everything here. Do you have like a scariest moment or a life-changing moment you can think of when you were flying? Do you remember anything that really stuck out, the worst?
Yeah. The day I got my radio shot out, uh, uh, I was hit. The way we navigated in Europe was they had two radar stations down this side of the ocean and the English Channel. And when we wanted to get a fix, we just called them and counted up to 10 and back down to 0, and they would give us a fix. They'd say fly, like if we were going home to England, fly 270 degrees for 10 minutes and give us a call. So we'd fly 10 minutes, we'd give them a call, and then maybe continue on 270, or maybe to change it a little bit. But that's how we navigated. Well, without a radio, you can't navigate. All you got your compass, and you can fly by compass. So I couldn't get any navigating help from the ground radar. So I'm flying due west, and as I got out toward the coast, I thought, how am I going to know where I am when I come out there? I'm going to be over water. Is it going to be the ocean? Is it going to be the English Channel? Is it going to be the North Sea? Or what's it going to be? I didn't know. So I looked at my gas gauges, and I decided, well, I'll fly out so far, and if I don't find land, I'll turn around and fly back. So that's what I did. I went out, didn't find land, turned around, flew back, so I figured it was the ocean, and I figured I was south of all London, England and all that. You didn't want to fly north because the Germans still had a few occupied places where there were anti-aircraft and near the coast. So I thought, well, I'll fly south. So I looked at the first airfield I saw. It was all bombed out. I couldn't get in there. Came to another airfield. It was all bombed out. I couldn't get in there. The third airfield I came to, it was bombed some, but I thought, I can get in there, I think. So I made a landing there. Didn't know where I was. I found out I was in, and it was very south of see, my wife told me, don't ever do this again, because I can't think of it. Bordeaux, France is where I landed. And that's, if I'd have gone another 10 miles, I'd have been in Spain. And I'd have been kept there for the rest of the war. They won't let you leave a neutral country. And so I finally got on the ground, and I was just about out of fuel when I did. And the next day, a young girl came in there and asked me if she could help me. She could talk English, and I said, well, I need 100 gallons of high octane gasoline in my plane. And she said, I'll see what I can do. So 4 hours went by, 5 hours went by, and finally she came back, and a gas truck came with her. And she says, well, I got you 100 gallons of gas, but it's regular gas. It's not high octane. I said, well, I don't know whether the Mustang will fly on that or not, but we're going to put it in there and try. So we put the 100 gallon in the plane. I took off and flew up the coast till I hit Calais, and flew across the English Channel to England and got back to my air base and landed. So, but when I landed, that's what I say, I was concerned because I was just about out of fuel when I finally got in that third airfield. Oh, I spent all night that night in a bombed out chateau with the whole west wing of the building gone. And on the east wing, they had a fireplace. And they had a big fire going on in that fireplace. And there was about 4 or 5 other guys in there with me. And I sat up by the fireplace all night long. I didn't sleep. And I was drinking tea in a big old tin cup all night long. I was drinking that tea and sitting there wondering what I was going to do because I was out of gas. So that's what happened.
Did you ever think, you wouldn't make it back to the end of the war? Did you think you'd be stuck there until you could find gas, or did you expect to make it back as quickly as you did?
I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't have any expectations except I just was glad to get on the ground because I needed to. And then I didn't know where I was. And then when I found out I was in Bordeaux, France, I knew I was near Spain. And then I didn't get to talk to anybody to talk to that young lady.
How did your radio get shot out? What happened with that?
I was strafed. I was shooting at, what was I shooting at that day? I guess I was shooting at a train. I'm not sure. You see, when we first started shooting up trains, we didn't have anything shooting at us. But then the Germans got wise and they started putting machine guns on the first boxcar back of the engine. And as soon as the fighter would be coming in toward the engine, they'd drop that and they'd shoot. Well, a couple of the last trains I shot at, they were shooting at me, and that's how they got me. One guy ahead of me, he got shot and he got hit, and he pulled up over the train, rolled over, and crash landed on the other side. But I just got hit in the radio. That's all on that right side.
Did you know the guy who got shot down?
I knew it at the time, but I don't know his name now.
What like 2 more questions. What was it like when you lost somebody from your flight?
Oh, it wasn't good, that's for sure. We'd think about it. When I first got there, the night I went in by train and got there and went into the barracks where I was going to stay, the 3 guys that were in there said, well, help yourself to the bunks. He said, we lost 5 guys last week, so you can take your pick. So that's the welcome I got when I got there.
Did that weigh on you at all? Did you think about that, or?
Sure. Sure thought about it. They lost 5 guys in a week right out of that barracks. We did have heavy losses. We did.
I was reading a story, Flyboys by James Bradley, and it talked about, it was about airmen, Navy airmen in the Pacific, and it talked about how, pilots, sometimes a pilot would say, this is it, I'm not coming back, and sure enough, on that mission was his last mission. But the guys who never said that,
I never said
came back.
I wanted to come home and get married. And we've been married 67 years.
That part's incredible.
It's great. It's been a good life, good wife, and a good life.
I have 2 questions then for you. What's your definition of bravery or heroism? How would you define that?
I don't know. I can't define it. Like I say, we had, at least I had fear every time I was going on a mission until I got into actual combat. And then all fear left. I didn't have it anymore.
Did you ever see any acts of bravery or acts of heroism that, that others performed that really...
Well, I just know about them. I didn't see them. Like when our colonel got killed. And when the guy flying my second plane got killed, what are you going to do? You just go from there.
Last question then. If you could think back to your experiences in the military, And if you could think of one word or phrase to describe that, how would you describe your experiences?
One word. I'll tell you, it was the Lord that brought me through all of it. I know that. But I don't know what I'd just say that war is hell. That's all I could tell you. Because it is. You see a plane going down. You see a bomber. I'd see bombers going down, especially B-24s. They couldn't stay up like the B-17 could. I saw 3 B-24s go down one day. First one went spinning like that, and nobody come out of it. Another one rolled over and went down backwards like that. And the other one was out further in front of me, and I saw some parachutes come out of it. 10 guys there's 10, 20, 30 guys that were lost except the 3 that parachuted. It's just something that war is awful. That's all there is to it. That's why I don't think we should be in Afghanistan. I don't think we should give anything to well, in today's paper, it said that they were going to not give this country over there, and I can't think of the name of it.
Libya? Libya or Syria?
Neither one. Another one.
Not Egypt.
No.
Because I read that same article, but I don't remember what country.
Yeah. What is the name of it? Not Africa, but I can't think of it.
I can't think of it.
But anyway, they said they weren't going to send over $8 billion this year. I can't see why they ever send $8 billion any year. We need to keep it here to take care of what we got to take care of. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had all this trouble we've got. Yeah, I can't understand our Washington at all.
That's all the questions I have for you.
Okay.
I appreciate you taking the time to sit and talk. That was a fantastic interview.